Good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? This is Jeremiah, and we have another one of our amazing webinars for you on hardscapes. My favorite hardscape story is when I had a meeting with the head landscape architect at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida, and he took me on a little tour of the theme park, and it was the most amazing thing because he's pointing out, instead of yeah, there's lions and giraffes and stuff. But he's pointing out, the hardscape items primarily because it was a real hardscape intensive theme park, and they really pushed themselves to do some really amazing things. How do you make concrete look like an old worn asphalt road, or how do you make a concrete path look like a dirt path that has bicycle tracks crisscrossing it? How do you make a fence look like an old beaten down wooden fence, but yet has to be extremely robust, able to withstand thousands of visitors a year? Just amazing how they can pull that off. And it really led to us expanding our hardscape capabilities in the software, and I've always been really proud of the fact that the software can handle the most intensive, complex, even unusual hardscape designs. And so, of course, if it can scale up, it can also handle the simplest ones. And that's the real power of the software. So always had a special place in my heart for it. And we're going to give you a little intro to all of that. I have just a couple super quick housekeeping items. Most important, we are recording this, so it'll be up on the website later today. But in the meantime, you're here with us live for the ride. So go ahead and click that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can get that little box situated where you like it. So it'll be quicker for you to type a question in, but also note you're going to be able to see the answers that we type to other people's questions. So it just makes a great little companion as you're with us on this little tour. So that being said, I will hand this over to Amanda and we will get it going.
Thanks, Jer, and thank you all for joining me today. My name is Amanda Marin, and I'm a landscape architect with 14 years of experience now in the field of landscape architecture and with land effects. And I'm here to train you on something that will easily triple the value of the land effects license that you already own for our AutoCAD plugin if you're not already using the FX site or details ribbons, which is pretty common. Usually people who start with our software start with the planting tools. So if you're not using them, you're basically throwing away time and profit. So I want you to think of if any of these scenarios apply to you. And if they do, give you a little bit of time to read them. So you're using your blocks and hatches, but you don't quantify it right now because it's a lot of work, or you make schedules as tables in AutoCAD and send to Excel. It takes you a lot of time, probably even like a day or more. Um, you make edits to your plans, or you avoid doing that. You have to redo all those schedules. It takes a lot of time, and you hate trying to figure out how to load and scale blocks and hatches and details, or you just have a detail library that's super confusing. So if you do fit into one of these boxes, you're in the right place. However, I limited myself to 5 common scenarios just because that's what fit on this slide, because really RefNotes and details will help in way more situations than these. These are just the most common that I find of people who come in saying, hey, I want to do better. How do I do better? I noticed that you have this module in your software. How do I use it? So here's the basics that we are going to cover today. It's a simple workflow that I'm going to go through. Obviously, you can go more advanced, but I want to get you started and get you wanting more out of it because it is super helpful right from even these tiny basics that you can just add into your workflow right now on your next project and just start saving time and slowly build up what you'll be doing. So build up your plans and your capabilities over time, the time savings. So with that, let's kind of jump straight into CAD actually right away. So this is a very simple plan, but very clean, right? It doesn't have it's very easy to see what's going on here. Everything's nicely labeled, and I have a great schedule in here. This is what we'll be making today. I've kept it very simple, but I will be moving maybe a little quick because there's still a lot of things to cover to show you how to connect all of these parts. So like Jer said, we are recording this and the recording will be up on our website later today. So you can follow along with that. So it's okay to watch this the first time. So to give you some highlight reels on this, it has some complex paver hatches already in here and nicely scaled to what is legible on the plan. And it also has complex paver hatches that if I go in here into the actual model space of this, I can use, if I go over here to my FX site ribbon, I can use edit object and I can click on it and actually see some information about what that paver is. It's an Ackerstone Aqualina in herringbone pattern. I've got some items down here I can start filling in. It's in the division paving unit paving. It's got a cost to it. If I wanted to set a detail, it has a detail to it. And also from here, I can edit that information. From there, I can edit all that information and I can even edit the hatch if I really wanted to. In this case, it's a manufacturer, so I probably want to keep the hatch. But again, it also has blocks, and these blocks also have that same amount of data in them if I do edit object. And I have tools to go and place these blocks even faster than I've been able to before. If I go up here to copy along a line, I can continue these out even further, just like that in this plan. Keeping going, we have back on that sheet plan, which is in a completely different DWG, by the way, but it's still linked. We have callouts for all of these things, detail callouts with a ref note callout to that reference note number that this is linked to, that then links to a schedule over here. If I go and find my bike racks, there's that S 301 for that do more bike rack, and all the information about it here is in the schedule with my quantities all in here. And this thing is really easy to update if I need to. I can just click on the schedule button in the RefNote manager. And again, I'm going through this quickly at first, but we'll be breaking down each of these points through the next hour. But if I click on that schedule, it's really easy to regenerate this schedule with new quantities in here to kind of update the information in here with any changes, any new items that I place in here or items that I delete for a revision. And also with all of these callouts, they are dynamically linked to the details. So if I look over on, say, this solid wood panel, it's currently on, saying it's on detail 1 on sheet LD02. And if I go over to that one that I had, you can see, oh, there's no wood fence over here. I had actually moved it over here to kind of start saving some space and rearranging my details. I can just go over here, go to my FX details ribbon and click update detail callouts. And that's going to update that number. It's now on D01, detail number 7. So I can look at what that looks like too. I have a tool over here, callout preview. I can click on that detail callout and actually see a preview of what that detail looks like in the system. And adding these details, you can see where they all are here in the detail manager. It makes it really easy to organize things, find things, fix things even. So I can go over to if I go over to my, let's see, LDO1, and I look at something in here and I'm like, oh no, that's like the wrong bollard detail that I need to use, I can quickly swap that out with the tools that I have. I can click on that bollard detail, I can click replace, and I can search through my entire library to find a better bollard detail somewhere in here in my standard library and just swap it out, and it's just going to fix up everything in here. I'm just going to leave it there for right now. Um, let's see what else I wanted to kind of highlight on here. So we can go and I have all the schedule with there. It has the accurate quantity. It links to the detail. That was the one thing I wanted to show. If I go over to this item over here, here in the reference note schedule, I actually can link to the detail again in this area. So when I regenerate the schedule, if I made any changes to where those details are, that detail location is going to update over here again. And I can even send this schedule out to, say, an Excel spreadsheet with all the exact same information now ready for me to start making a more detailed, say, cost estimate. So I exported this one with the quantities and the cost, and it already extrapolated out to a total that I can then start working in Excel to just quickly format and add any more grand totals that I want into this sheet very quickly. It's just all set up in there. I don't need to try and copy and paste things over and try and keep this up to date. I can always just export a new Excel to update any quantities. And so you can have organized, smart, clean hardscape drawings in AutoCAD like this too. Your designs are not too small to benefit from this, and they are not too wild and big, like Jer was saying, to benefit from this. Every level of plan can benefit from this level of organization because it just makes things faster all throughout those scales. To be able to, on top of all of this, all of it's nice and linking and organizing, the next project that I go into, I can import my reference notes from this past project. I can start setting up templates to be able to have an entire palette of different things that I always use already set up with the details associated, with all the information in here embedded already into all of these extra um, reference note fields, and even set to custom blocks if I want to. And I'll kind of show off all of those things. So let's keep going then. We are going to go into a blank drawing where I haven't done all of this. And we're going to kind of go through it. So the very first thing you're going to want to do, you want to use the same project number as you are using for your planting design as well. So if you are using our planting design tools, of course, you are adding the hardscape onto it, ideally you want your hardscape to be in a different DWG with the planting XREF'd in, but I'm just going to leave this nice and clean for the purposes of presenting and focusing on the hardscape in this webinar. But they can link together. So you would go over into FX admin and open up the project list. For your hardscape detail, you bring in your same base and your same XREF, and you'd find your planting project in this list. I'm just going to make a new one just so that it's kind of blank for the hardscape, and I'm going to call it 2024, and we'll call it 004. Hardscape webinar presentation. You want to make sure it's set to your office preferences. And at this point, right at the beginning, we want to start associating with details because reference notes work better with details and details work better with reference notes. So why not get this started right now? So I'm going to go ahead and browse. And if you are working on a project that you had already set up with planting, you can of course click this project, open up this project by clicking open, and then just go to that project manager and do the same step in the project manager instead, and be like, oh, okay, I didn't need details, a detail folder for the planting, although kind of you do, plants need details too. But now that I'm starting to really get into it, I can go into there and browse and find it. At this point, you do need to figure out how you want to organize your project detail folders. And you need to figure out how you want to organize it based on project details and standard details. And the way I explain that is standard details are details like that do more bench that we had. That detail is going to be the same from project to project to project to project for that same manufacturer bench, or a standard picnic bench that you've created for, you just make it out, you get the contractor to make it out of wood, or a wood gate, or that wood panel fence that we talked about. Those would all be standard details. And then what I recommend is that for each project, you make copies of those standard details, or any new details that you create that are really project specific, like signage, entrance signage for a certain subdivision. That would be, you want to save copies into a project specific folder so that if you make edits later on, they don't affect the original standard detail. And because you will kind of tweak details from project to project. So you want to figure out how you want to organize your projects in here. I don't recommend having just a whole list of top level folders that are all your projects, because you will potentially, if you come into a lot of business, you're going to have a lot of projects there. So I want you to kind of break this down. I really like, and a lot of firms end up using, the year sorting. So what year was the project started? It goes into that year folder. Although I have seen good success with organizing it by project type as well. I've also seen people organize them by office if there's multiple offices under the same company. So I'm going to go under here, and you can see I already have one started in here. I'm just going to select this top level folder and click new, and I'm going to call it, this is my 2024 004 Hardscape webinar. And I'm going to call that 004 in here. So because this list organizes alphanumerically by the number or letters in the brackets, not by the name of the folder. So keep that in mind. I'm going to say okay, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to say okay, and that's all set up. That's going to open up my project manager. So if you are using that same project as the planting design, again, here's where that detail folder is that you can start browsing to right now. I'm going to say okay to this. And of course, the first thing you want to do is make sure you set your scale. So I have my layout in a separate drawing for this, and I have set my scale. Oh, I haven't in here. So I'm going to give you a quick tip on setting scale. Double clicking inside my viewport, I'm going to use our Land Effects Plot Scale tool, and I'm going to set that scale correctly. I can do, like, if I go 1 to 10 feet, yes, that's maybe, well, actually that's pretty good. So I'll probably use that. That's about what I did on the other drawing. And I can go through here and just make sure that that picks up everything I want it to. There we go. And I'm going to lock this viewport. Yes. And move it to the side a bit to leave some space for my schedule over here eventually. Great. So I have that set up. I want to make sure that I set the same scale over here now that I've decided on it, and make sure that in this DWG, the scale is also set to 1 inch equals 10 feet. If you are metric, of course, you would be using the metric system over here, and everything works perfectly exactly the same in metric as well. So the next thing I want to do is start working with my reference note manager. So I have my ref note manager and my detail manager open over here already. If you don't, let's go find them. So I'm going to go over here to FX site, and I have my reference note manager here. You can drop this down or just click on this. If you see this icon, that's the icon for the ref note manager. And that opens it up. And right now it's empty because this is the first time that we're trying this out, or it's a brand new project. So um, you can see over here that we have several different types of reference note. We have notation, amenity, length, area, and volume. Just like plants, these are suggestions on what goes into them, and really they're just describing the type of object that you're actually having in your model space in your DWG drawing. So notations are just callouts. That's it. They don't actually point to any object at all. They are just a callout, and if that callout exists in the plan, it will include that item in the schedule as well. All the information in that. And in my opinion, if I go to these notations, notation should only be used for things that are really like a lump sum or a note, a general note, or otherwise would never have a quantity. So I've seen a lot of land effects plans and tech support tickets where all the ref notes in the entire project are notation, because I guess the office feels that they don't need to calculate quantity, and just like placing call, and they feel like just placing the call out is quicker to just get the end schedule. And I would say if I click new, so you are just filling out a note and that's basically it, and maybe a cost too if it's more of a lump sum cost. Um, but they're still then placing hatches and block symbols in model space for the notation callout to point to, because it has to point to something visually. So it's kind of a false sense of time savings. So if you're using that, I suggest just use the right type of reference note, and then you can import new projects, import that ref note to new projects later on, and just place everything, symbol, call out, schedule, and detail really, really easily. And just bring it all together like that and actually save more time than just doing notation only projects like this. So I would say notations would be general notes like, where is the construction entrance? Like that. And of course, I really recommend, if you're getting into reference notes, I do know a lot of people fall back on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Really think about getting into divisions, because the real power with reference notes comes with divisions. If I go down to divisions, this is what is in here by default, and I suggest you pick one or the other. Either do letter divisions or do CSI number divisions. They behave differently, is really important to know. So let's look at, I like using CSI divisions, honestly, because I think that there's a lot more divisions off the bat. It's more standardized. It can easily connect with details and specifications and other disciplines like architecture and engineering. Whereas the letter divisions can sometimes be a lot easier to understand at a glance, because obviously P for paving, S for site furnishing, right? Instead of number divisions. It does rely on the language that you're using though. So if you're in a multi-language, CSI is much better. And it does run the risk over here of people not realizing that planting is in the P section, because I mean, planting wouldn't be in here, but you know, like synonyms, that sort of thing, like fences and railings, are they really different? And do they really need to be R for railing and F for fence? That can have some things. So they have their pros and cons, which way you go. Decide right up front which way you want to go. I'm going to go with the letters for now. And for instance, a construction entrance, I would probably put that in a demolition, or I could do maybe make a GE for general. I'm going to go with demolition for now. And that defaults to 101, and there's not really a cost associated with that. That's just to point out where the construction entrance is. And there's not really a detail with that unless you do detail that out. And that's about all I need for this one. This one's pretty simple. So I just say okay. And there's my construction entrance. And if I want to place this one, I go over to my sheet and say, oh, there's the construction entrance. We're going to grab it in the reference note manager and just place a ref note call out, just like that. There we go. D101 right there. And we can, I'll do schedules a little later on. So moving along, let's go into the next type, which is amenities. And this is where it starts to get really fun. So if I do a new amenity, you can do this two ways. You can do a generic or a custom amenity, or you can do a manufacturer that we have in our system. The ones that are not grayed out are the ones that we are actively working with to keep their catalogs up to date. So we can go with that do more, and I'm going to add that bike rack. So I can go into bike racks and I can grab that 292 bike rack. And this is fun because you can choose things like the color. So I can go to a hunter gloss green. And if I click add to project, by the way, I can also click on this to look at the product's website. I can go add to project, and it fills in all that information in the note. This is editable though, and I think I want to edit it a little bit to better fit into the schedule like I want it to. So I'm going to go division. I'm going to set that to site furnishings. And I'm going to keep it in a subdivision of bike racks. So that's going to renumber itself to 301. That's how the subdivisions work in the letter divisions. You set subdivisions to a number, and then every ref note after that number, but before the next number, gets included in that subdivision in the schedule eventually. So I can go and set a cost to this, and I apologize if I'm way off base on how much this will cost. I'm going to make a wild guess at 1,200 supply and install. And at this point, I can also set a detail, but we're going to do that a little bit later. Once we're going to make the detail for this, but after I kind of get through the rest of the reference notes. So once I set that division though, you might have noticed that it also insert these user fields. I have these user fields set up in my reference note preferences up here to include all of these extra columns that are going to appear in the schedule. So I can move information about this down here. So I can go to material. This happens to be a drop down. So I can drop it down and see what materials we used before. So I had used metal. It becomes really easy to put that in. If this happened to be wood, I could just type in wood instead. Footing, I already have surface mount there, and color, I actually already have the color set up. And model, I have the model set up. So I can kind of change this around to maybe remove that because the model's down here. Bike rack, we have surface mount down there, so we can get rid of that. Bike rack. Great, that's good information. And I can remove the color. So that keeps my schedule a little tighter by moving some of that information that comes in here by default down into the user fields. So let's say okay to this. And let's place that. So I'm probably going to place that maybe down in here like I did before. I can grab that amenity. I can click place. And I'm just going to click it down and rotate it. And you can see because I used that manufacturer amenity, it just brought in the block that we've already gotten from them, cleaned up, set into land effects and scaled, and it just brought it in. But now I have all of those options before. Let me do this one more time so I can show you. You can do hotkeys with these. So if I place this down again, I have keyboard commands. If I tap K, I can see what all those keyboard commands are. So I can do V for copy along a line, or C for copy along an arc, and you can even copy along a polyline. So I'm going to say OK, and I'm actually going to do P for copy along a polyline. It automatically selected that block, so I just need to select the polyline, can grab that, I get my guideline, and I can just put in a whole bunch of bike racks in here. Now, of course, the spacing is depending on how you've set your spacing. You can do A and D to kind of fine tune the spacing a little bit more arbitrarily, or you can just tap the number 1 and see how many space between blocks. So this is a bike rack, so obviously I want to have a minimum amount of space to actually fit bikes between. I'm going to put that at 2 feet, and I'm going to call it exact, and I'm going to say okay, and there we go, exactly 2 feet between all of those bike racks. And that's all nice and in there. Another way that you can do amenities, if I click new, you can go to generic custom, and you can either go off of a bunch of our blocks in here, or you can save in your own. So let's really quickly save in one of our own. So we have lots of blocks in here to choose from, and obviously the first time you look at it, it's going to download all those slides. But when you actually use it, it will download the DWG block itself. So I'm going to cancel, and I believe I had some up here, yeah, that I wanted to save in. So I have this barbecue grill block right here. I'm just going to grab this and rotate it. Actually, I think it should be good because, oh no, it's definitely just line mark. So I'm going to grab this and rotate it. RO, there we go. Specify the base point, F3 for snap, and I want a reference. Grab that, and then I'm just going to put that down and F8 to snap down there so it's nice and level. And I'm going to kind of move this off to the side a bit so that my slide just picks up this, hopefully. Okay, and then I'm going to go up to blocks and save block. I'm going to pick an insertion point. I'm going to pick this bottom corner. And then I'm going to pick all of the items in that block. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to save it in. So let's save this under plan graphics, and is this site furnishings? Sure, site furnishings, and I'll just make outdoor furniture. I think there is another outdoor furniture folder in here, but this is a newer installation for me, so I don't have that folder downloaded. I'm just going to make one so that you can see how easy it is to even make your own folder in here. Let me go back up and rename that one because I need to, for any spaces, actually put an underscore. There we go. And I'm going to call this BBQ 01, and I'm going to save it. There we go. That's the screenshot. If this screenshot is not up to your standards, you can retake it with the mslide command. We do have some documentation. Just search for the term mslide, M as in Mary, and that will take you to our documentation on how to reshoot this if it includes a whole bunch of other stuff, or it's not quite ideal. I do want this to be a 1-to-1 scale because it's always going to say the same scale, and I do want a manual rotation, and it is in feet. So I'm going to say okay, and that's in there now. I can go over here and let's add that new amenity in here. So I'm going to go over to generic custom, and there's my outdoor furniture, and there's my block, and I could say okay. And it's just going to put in the block name in here. So I can call this outdoor barbecue. And of course, set it to a division. I'll probably put it under site furnishings. There isn't, I'll put it on, you can obviously make a division under here, but actually let me show you what the exterior improvements, if I do a division like that, the subdivisions look like this. So I can do it under site furnishings in here, and then I would do O1. So that's how the numbering works for this. And of course, put a cost. And let's set a detail. I think I actually do have a detail in here. Oh no, not in this project because it's a new project. So we'll do that a little bit later. I can obviously fill in all of these user fields if I want to, but I'm just going to say okay so that you can see that when I place this, it's now placing that block. There we go. In there, and it's actually now a smart reference note item. So if I edit object on that, it's bringing up all that information about it, and I can make changes to it. So that's two ways to make site amenities. Let's quickly do length, volume, and area. So I'm going to do area and volume first because they're actually a lot more similar to amenity than length is at the moment. So I'm going to go to area and I'm going to click new. And again, you have manufacturers in here and you have generic custom. So if we go to generic custom, we have all of these great hatches that we just did with a massive hatch update in here. So I can go for some aggregate and maybe some, let's go with some random stone and say okay. And just call this stone mulch. And division, I'm going to put this under, we'll put it under rock. There we go. And cost, I'm going to say it's $5 a square foot. And depth, so this is where we differentiate between area and volume, is with the depth. So for something like an aggregate, I probably want to put an actual depth to it of, I'm going to say 4 inches. And if I go down here, I'm going to put this to continuous for the line type. And I'm going to say okay. One thing I haven't been covering too much, but you can also do now is actually assign a photo to these reference notes as well and use a photo call out. So do look into that if you want to, but I'm going to keep going because we have still a lot to cover. I'm going to say okay. And that should have, oh yeah, it didn't add it to area, it added it to volume. So I can go ahead and place that down. Now it's easier to place things down on polylines, but if you need to in a pinch, you can grab that, place it, and just hit D for draw and draw in an area like that. And it will place it. And the great thing about what Land Effects is doing, it's not just putting all that data in here, it automatically scaled that hatch to that plot scale that I set before, and it's put it all on a custom layer. So it's forcing those best CAD practices for your office, and you can kind of customize how this all works. The more and more you use it, you might customize a little more and more and fine tune it over the years. So let's add from one of those. You can go through all those hatches, but don't forget about the manufacturers in here. We actually just had a support ticket come in this week, actually, asking for support to load in Unilock hatches into reference notes manually from the hatch pattern files on their website. And we were like, what are you doing? They're already there. You just have to click on here and you get their entire library. And the kicker was that they were requesting to load in a retired paver product that Unilock no longer supplies. They were trying to bring in that hatch. So this manufacturer section is maintained in cooperation with the manufacturer to keep it up to date with the hatches that they have in their product line currently. Catalog is up to date and all the hatches working perfectly, because the one thing that we've had not necessarily from the Unilock pattern files, but from a lot of pattern files from a lot of other manufacturers. There have been a lot of issues where people try and come to us for support because those pattern files just don't work. Whereas if they're in our system, you can be sure that they are going to work. So I can go for something really nice like this art line product that they have, or I can go back into here and something like Brussels block, tried and true, right? I love it. It has all the Brussels block patterns in here. So let's go with this really random looking one and add that to the project. And of course you can do your division and all of your information in here for everything that gets filled in. I'm just going to keep going. Unit paving, there we go. Cost is not going to be per cubic yard because this is going to be per depth. It's going to actually come out to area. So I'm going to put this in as, say, $15 a square foot. And I'm going to say, okay, oh, I do want that to be continuous. So that's really easy to then place. So I can go ahead and place, and this time I'm going to actually select a polyline, and there it is, all in there. So I can go ahead and start just placing it in a few different locations. Oh, Control Z, I don't want that one. That didn't quite do what I wanted it to. Control Z. Oh, that's probably because they weren't connected. So I'm going to undo that one and just place it in here for now. So that kind of just highlights the importance of making sure your polylines are properly closed off. I hadn't totally closed off that polyline yet, but good CAD drafting is always a necessity at any level. If you get this issue where the hatches are somewhat going over, it's usually a display issue and you just have to type RE and they'll go behind. But if they don't for some reason, you can always use hatch to back is a great CAD command to send all of those hatches off to the back. There we go. Now they're looking pretty. So 2 ways to put in areas and volumes. And then the last one, of course, is lengths. So where I'm going to go to new and we're going to make a fence. So I'm going to do a wood fence and we're going to go division. I'm going to put it under fence. So it's going to be F101 and I'm going to set cost to it and we're going to go to layer. Now you can choose a layer from in here or you can click add new and it will attempt to make a layer based off of the number that you've already chosen and the division that you've chosen. So I really like that feature. I'm going to use that. It had an error creating it because I had actually made this layer already in my list, but I did want to show you how to make that new. So I'm just going to choose that one that I already had in here. And of course you can put the height, material, color, finish. I'm just running low on time. You don't need to do a 2D symbol at this moment. So I'm just going to say, okay. And we're going to grab that and I can place it. So it will actually calculate any line that appears on that layer. So if you already have things in here, you can select them and move it to the layer that you just created in your list. Or if I grab this one and click place, it brings me into the polyline command, but with that layer chosen to start drafting on. So I can go F3 and I'm just going to put in this fence a little bit around here. We'll go up here and then over and down and over. And I just want to get enough of these bends in here so you can see the next feature, because obviously you can go and find this layer in your layer properties manager and set a line type to it just over here. But I really like, especially for these fences, this railing tool. So if I go to railing and select that polyline that I drew, I have all of these great options in here. So I can go for this wood screen fence and specify the length between posts. And I can change this like to say 6 feet and I'm going to go okay. And what it's actually doing is putting a post at the ends, and the spacing might not be exactly 6 feet, but what it's doing is trying to space them out evenly so that it looks actually like what's going to be installed on the field. As opposed to a line type, those posts will never end up on the end points like that. And the best part about this is a block, but it still calculates with our schedule. And if you need to edit this at any point, all you need to do is run the railing tool. It brings it back to a polyline, and then run the railing tool on it again, select and that, and say, okay, we are working on some improvements to this to have a bit more memory on what it was before, and even set this to the reference note. So look out for that in the future. So that's all set up. Those are all my reference notes. Let's do some callouts and some details and some schedules. So back over here on my sheet, I'm going to, before I go over there, obviously, since it's a different DWG, I need to save this. And I like working in different DWGs so that I can have multiple people working in this at a time. I'm going to make sure that this sheet is also set, is also set up to my new project. So let's go to FX admin, and under project list, I'm going to make sure that this is set to my 2024-004. Yes, there we go. Okay, there we go. Awesome. And I can start reloading. There is all of my information, and I can start calling out and scheduling. Let's do a schedule really quick. So I'm going to go schedule. And these are our options right now. Again, this is going to probably go through an overhaul next year, but right now here it is, and look out for some of the new improvements, like adding symbol for links is definitely coming down the road. So I'm going to do text for my call out instead of block. User fields just to use, and I am going to include detail and quantity in this version. And here's how you send it over to a spreadsheet if you need to. If Excel is installed on your computer, it will send it straight to Excel. Otherwise, spreadsheet will ask to save to a CSV file that you can load up in something like Google Sheets. So with drawing style, this looks perfect for me. I'm going to say okay. And we're going to pop it up here. It might be a little bit wide because of that, that bike rack area. So I can go ahead and maybe move that over here a little bit because it's all one block. It's really easy to move around. But you can see it's counted up how many linear feet of wood fence I had, how much stone mulch, and my unit paving. I'll have to look at what happened with that one when I added it in. But that's okay. It's probably just a bug in this tester version that I'm using. But I also counted up how many bike racks I have. And you'll notice that the detail section is empty because we haven't done anything with details yet. So let's go over and do details, because with my callouts in this instance, we already did the one callout for the one reference note I don't want to associate with a detail, or don't need to. But for all the rest, I actually want to link the detail to the reference note. And I'm going to use the detail callout instead of the reference note callout for those. So let's go ahead and do that. The one I'm going to use as an example is this bike rack. So I have, let's first make our detail sheet. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to do a new one. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to just do a save as at the moment. And make this easy. Or actually, no, I'm not going to do a save as. I'm going to copy this title block, and I'm going to do a copy with base point. Copy base, there it is. And I'm going to say 0, 0. Great. And I'm just going to do a brand new from my decimal feet template. And I already have my title block set up in this drawing. Let's just wait for it to load really quick. I've been finding this actually recently. I think it might be an update with the Zoom module, is that it seems to be slowing down some things. I'll have to see about some new updates to Zoom or maybe reach out to them because it usually is really, really fast when I'm just using it. So I don't need a viewport for this. I'm going to make this into a detail sheet. So I'm going to save this as DO1. Save. Great. And of course, you'd fill out your title block, but I'm focusing on the details today. And we are going to assign it to the exact same project. 2024-004, open. Okay. Great. There's all my reference notes. Let's go over to details. So detail manager is just under here, and it looks like the reference note manager, but it's of course for details. So I need to add details in here in order to place them on this sheet. And this is kind of my first detail in my office. So let's just kind of do it as we go through the project, which is probably the easiest and most cost efficient way for you to do this, honestly. Don't worry about not being able to use details until you get an intern to build up your whole library. Just start doing it on a project by project basis and slowly building up your library, and then organizing a bit more later once you have more and more standard details that you can use. So I'm going to recreate this guy right here. So I pulled out that detail, and what I want to do is not use this DWG file it came with, but use a blank one. So I'm going to go ahead and grab pretty much all the information in here and do that copy with base point again. It's the copy base command is the one I like using going between drawings. And I'm going to go and create now, instead of a decimal feet drawing, this is for metric, you would want to use millimeters for your details. And for imperial, you'd always want to use inches for your details for the most part. That is usually the standard. And there's some detail tools that work better in inches and millimeters than they do in feet and meters. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into model space and paste this down and start putting in a template. There we go. Let's go to model space and Control V, paste that down. Now, when I pasted it, this is one of the big things that you need to test on these sorts of things when you're creating your details. In land effects, this is not the right size. It's currently 3 inches. It should be 3 feet. So I'm going to grab that and scale it up by 12. There we go. And these are small right now, but that's okay. First, we need to make sure we have the right scale for it. And we do have a whole hour-long webinar on how to make details properly. I am going to condense it down into 3 minutes. So we're going to go with templates, and I'm just going to go with what I've got. I'm going to 00 office prefs, and I'm going to go with the 1A. Just trust me, go with the 1A for the most part, and then explore into the other sizes as you go along. I'm going to pick a scale and I'm going to say okay, and it's about the right size. I can always hit E and W to like really fine tune it, but this is about the right size. So I'm going to include it over here. That gets me this. I'm going to call this bike rack 292 series. I will call it do more. There we go. And I'm going to grab this logo, and I like to keep these in my details. I'm running out of time. Move. There we go. I like to keep these in my details, so I like to move it somewhere up here. And basically what you're going to do is like delete all that because I don't need any of that anymore. And we're going to change this all into our now standards for land effects, your land effects details. So instead of these tiny little dimensions, I'm going to use our dimension tool, do a linear dimension. Yes. That asked if I want to use the default, and I'm just going to say yes, and you can fine tune this as you get more and more used to this tools. And I'm going to say MA, and I'm just going to go ahead and go around all of these and fix them up, and then start readjusting them to be all in the right spots. If you want to redo these, obviously, the easiest way, if their detail is done correctly, is to just put the right type of annotation, detail leader with text, right? Just like that, and kind of put in gibberish and then match properties over to it. But in this case, it happens to be M text and an M leader separately. So instead, I have to copy all of this and do an M leader and then paste it into the new M leader to be the new style. And even over here, it's all not an M leader. So I would want to do text to M text in that case, turn it to an M leader or M text. And then I had to go through and redo all of these and then just kind of move things around so it fits into your standard, and do the same thing down here, but using something like the detail text or detail M text to match properties between. And you will get something that looks like this. There we go. So I did all of that and I resized it to your standards, because the great thing about the land effects details is that we are now engaging in using text and dimensions that are standardized for our office's preferences. The right font, the right size of text, everything is consistent, detail to detail to detail, no matter what scale it's at. So we can have a consistent look that looks really professional on our detail sheets. This is what I recommend doing. So once you're done that, you will go and save that detail. And you can see I saved a version of it over here. I'm going to save a version of it in here and just select and say save. Okay. And there we go. Now I can go over to my detail sheet, grab that, place it, make sure I tell it what sheet this is. This is D01. Whoops, I think it was LD01 details. Yes, I'm going to rename this layout. One. There we go. We have a detail placed on LD01. I can delete these other layouts. And that's ready to go. It's saved in here in my detail manager. I can go back over here and wrap up this webinar by going in here and using my callout tool. Calling out this. Oh, I don't want to call it out just yet. One last thing. I need to go back to FX site, back to my reference note, edit that bike rack. And I want to edit that bike rack while I'm in the drawing with the bike rack. So I can even just use edit object on the bike rack. And I want to assign that detail. There we go. There it is. It's assigned. I say okay. Right. And then go save this. Go back over here. Reload. That just brings in the new data. Back to FX details. And then call out that detail. And here's a call out tool. There we go. Okay. This is LH01 Hardscape. And I want to include the title and I want to include the reference note. And I'm just going to use this call out for now. and pop that in. There's my call out. It's linked. It's linked. Everything is linked. I'm going to regenerate this schedule. Yes. And there's the detail. So it's that fast to put it together. Once you got it all together, obviously, what you can do from here, learning more, is doing things like customizing your reference notes and details more, building those libraries project over a few years even. Then start looking into work areas and UCSs if you haven't already. They're really helpful for hardscapes in particulars, as well as starting to save in your schedule defaults, play around with all those options in the schedule, start making templates of your reference notes and details, and work a little bit more on your project detail organization, and just look at a few more tools in this site ribbon and these detail ribbons, and continue on in our webinar series that we've already recorded for deeper dives into these. You've now got the basics to get an easier hardscape plan right away, and take your time to build and improve your workflow with all these tools over the years. It will just get better and better, with the results being time saved, profits retained, less errors, and the standards are just easier to train for new hires. You just have to show them this video recording, frankly. It's really time to answer well, yeah, it's time for you to start doing it. And it's time for me to start answering some questions if we have some, to clarify anything or point you in the right direction for certain scenarios that you might have.
Well, I think you wowed everybody because we got a good question on just pointing out, that if you do symbol and code, that the header's incorrect. And, we're aware that, like you mentioned, we're going to be adding the lines to the schedule,
Hmm.
scaling the symbol more. The symbol will be kind of inside the schedule rather than kind of hanging off to the left. We've got quite a bit scheduled for RefNote schedule, all piggybacking off of our massive plant schedule project, which I'm staring at right now on my other monitor. I hope you guys are excited to see a brand new plant schedule. Um, but otherwise, I don't see any other questions. So I think we'll just wish everybody well. Keep the ideas coming as you come into issues or problems or ideas for future webinars. Always feel free to drop us a line. Otherwise, have a fantastic weekend, and we will catch you next time.